It just means that Ash is a completely unconvincing main character compared to the other two. How's it going everyone, Rival right here and welcome back to the channel. For the about 470 of you watching who might be aware that a while back I made a video where I asked a simple question. Was changing Ash as the main character of the Pokemon anime series a good idea? There were without a doubt many good reasons to change Ash as the main character. In his most recent outing during the Master Journeys, he won the Master Tournament, which allowed him to become the best that there ever was. For his entire arc, Ash's main goal was to become the best there ever was, and he achieved that. The conclusion just felt right. Reaching his main goal was a good point to pass over the baton, especially considering he had been the main character of the series for 26 years now. As a matter of fact, he's actually been the main character of Pokemon for as long as I've been alive. That is quite a long time. Like, a very long time. Now, when I originally did that video, there was nothing to compare to the original anime series when trying to figure out whether or not changing Ash as the main character was the correct move or not. No matter how you look at it, changing the main character after 2.5 decades is always going to be a big risk, even if he'd reached the conclusion of his story arc. Well, look no further as Pokemon Horizons has been airing for a while now. At the time of recording this episode, we're around 15 or 16 episodes into the anime. Now, for a regular watcher of anime, you'll know that generally in seasons we tend to air in either 13 episodes or 26 episode cycles. So with around 15 or 16 done at the time of recording, I feel like that's enough of a sample size to discuss whether or not changing the main character was the right idea, and whether or not the new series lives up to the previous. Now, I am going into this blind. At the time of recording this introduction, I haven't actually watched the series, or read up on anything that goes on throughout it. And of course it's gonna go without saying, but there's obviously going to be spoilers during this. So if you haven't watched the new series, or watched any of Ash's old stuff, be prepared. I will try to keep it to a minimum, but I can't promise anything. Let's get into it. So we know what Ash's main storyline arc is. But what is the main idea behind Pokemon Horizons? Well, it's time to step back into our original setting in the Kanto region, as we follow not one, but two main characters. The first we're introduced to is Liko. Liko. Post-Ryan editing, can you show which one's the correct one? She's a timid young girl from the Paldea region who is travelling to attend the Indigo Academy, where her main aim is to become a Pokemon trainer. Naturally, new region means she has to obtain her first Pokemon, which turns out to be our favourite cute green cat. And as an important note, by the way, it seems in this academy you can choose from all the starters. I don't necessarily know what the criteria is. Is it based on the region you come from, or... Anyways, her start acts in a very similar way to Pikachu in the first episode of the first season, showing some reluctance to obey its trainer and behaves quite sassy and flippant towards her. It is here we discover that Liko has a special pendant with her that has been given to her by her grandmother. The pendant seems to be very important and valuable as it leads to our new evil team becoming interested in her so they can try and take it. When cornered by our new evil team, she is saved by the rival team of them called the Rising Volt Tacklers. The leader of the Rising Volt Tacklers naturally has two important Pokemon of the past, because they simply had to be featured, and that's a Charizard and a Pikachu. Important to note that Pikachu is referred to as Captain Pikachu. Her initial adventures with the Rising Volt Tacklers leads to us meeting our other main character, a young boy named Roy. Hey, that rhymed. Naturally because of the new games. Roy also has a Gen 9 starter in everyone's favourite Fire Crocodile. Like with Liko, we discover that Roy has a mysterious and interesting item that is sought after by the enemy team. In his case, it happens to be a Pokeball. Now, what happens to be in this Pokeball, you ask? Oh, you know, just a shiny Rayquaza. Me and many in the Pokemon community had to reset for that multiple times, sometimes hundreds of times, and our new main character just happens to have a Pokeball that has it in it. It does seem like these two items are linked to each other thanks to Rayquaza's reaction, and so begins our main adventure. The effort to find out what Liko's shining pendant means, and why does Roy happen to have a mysterious Pokeball that contains a shiny Rayquaza? Let's look a little bit more in depth into Pokemon Horizons characters. Unlike in the original series, we now have two main characters to fit different roles. Liko is a timid girl who's travelling to Kanto to learn how to become a Pokemon trainer. trainer at the Indigo Academy. It's shown quite early on she isn't quite sure of herself, and this is something that translates to a starter Pokemon who notices that she is lying to herself about her opinions quite easily. Throughout her initial travels, which feature a partner Pokemon and her having a rocky start, they start to form a strong bond and she starts to become a bit more sure of who she is. Her pennant ends up becoming a main vocal point of the story. Its mysterious origin and why it exists becomes important to both herself, the team she joins, and the evil team, the Explorers, who have taken a big interest in stealing the pennant from her. Our other main character, Roy, is quite a contrast to Liko. He seems to be shown as quite energetic and ready to explore. Roy wants to find all the Pokemon he has not seen, including the legendaries, which is why he's quite a perfect fit to have a shiny Rayquaza kept in a Pokeball, something that also attracts a lot of attention. We also quickly establish our main bad guys in the Explorers. Initially, their main goal and objective is not clear to begin with, unlike Team Rocket, who naturally just wanted to take over the world. They're actually shown to be quite cunning and ready to take whatever route necessary in order to achieve their goals. In fact, early on, one of their admins introduces himself as a representative of Liko's grandmother, in an attempt to try and get the pennant from her. The Rising Volt Tacklers, on the other hand, are the good guy end, led by Freed, who portrays our cool guy character in the new anime series. He is well respected and liked by his team, owning the Charizard that saves Liko in the first episode. But the most important character to discuss, however, is without a doubt Captain Pikachu. Feels right to me that one of the best characters in this series was also one of the best characters in the first series. But Captain Pikachu with his cool hat and the ability to use Thunder Punch, which to be honest, I didn't even remember that Pikachu could learn, is actually one of my favourite introductions to any character in any Pokemon ever. The members of both the Rising Volt Tacklers and the Explorers make up our core cast, alongside one of our rivals from Scarlet and Violet. So let's first compare our main protagonists. In the original series, Ash was our main protagonist. From the beginning, Ash is shown to be quite rash and very driven. His main goal is quite simple, to be a Pokemon Master. Throughout his journey, Ash matures and learns exponentially before he reaches the pinnacle of being a trainer. For Horizon, we have two different protagonists. One is shown to be a little timid and shy, but also a clear sign of being brave when the time comes. Our other protagonist is shown to be very energetic and ready to jump into any situation. Something that I think is quite important is that our main characters are both female and male. In the original series, Ash did have companions travel with him, but they usually changed. Whereas now we've got two main characters, one male and one female perspective, and that's going to be a constant thing. I think having both in there is very important, because it can be somebody to relate to. And the Pokemon series has to have a villainous team, solely as a threat or form of conflict. Now, in the original series, I always felt like Team Rocket were more comic relief. They would take Pikachu or some other Pokemon and this would last for the rest of the episode before they blasted away. On the other hand, the Explorers are shown to be a bit more of a threat than Team Rocket. While their intentions aren't known, their desire to get the mysterious Pokeball of Roy's and Liko's necklace gives an indication they know more about the items than the main characters. The main story objectives are much different in tone. While Ash's goal is to be the best that ever was, collect the badges and go to the Pokemon League, in Horizons our main objective early on seems to be figuring out what the deal is with Liko's necklace and why this old mysterious Pokeball has a shiny Rayquaza. And as an indication these items are linked. The storylines being so vastly different is important because it allows Pokemon Horizon to go in any particular direction it wants, without necessarily getting stale. Ash's entire journey has been based on the concept that he has to win the Pokemon League, and be the best there ever was. The unfortunate thing is this leaves the storyline objective extremely rigid with no room for movement. It just means that Ash is a completely unconvincing main character compared to the other two. He ends up having some unconvincing performances or poor storyline decisions in order to extend the anime. In Sinnoh, he has to face two legendary Pokemon with one trainer in order to defeat him. In Unova, his Pikachu, when travelling from multiple seasons, got beat by a new Sniper. And no, I will not accept any argument that it was weakened. It's a silly reason. He also got beat in the final of Kalos as well before finally winning. The decision to continuously extend the anime's rigid format meant it was always going to be an eventuality where he won, and you would then have to look at the next step. That's not saying that Ash is a bad main character, but our two new ones allow for a bit more of a flexibility in terms of storyline. It's going to allow for adaptability as they please. Initially we have a serious focus on Liko's necklace and the shiny Rayquaza, but that's not going to go on for 26 years. The series is not going to end on that alone. It will quite easily introduce the next goal for both our main characters at any given point. When you become the best, well, you're the best. When you figure out what your magic necklace is and what this shiny Rayquaza is, you can then look at your next goal. So, the question in everyone's mind is pretty simple. Is Pokemon Horizons a better series than the original, or at a minimum a worthy successor to the original series? And the answer to that really is going to depend on what side you stand on. Horizons and the original Pokemon have much more of a different aim at the forefront of it. Ash's entire journey is extremely rigid and unmovable. Whilst he would generally have side episodes exploring different concepts or topics, Ash's story would generally come back to one thing: get to gym, beat gym, try win Pokemon League. It will not deviate from its original structure and therefore will stay the same as an overlying arc. Whereas in Horizons there's much more freedom from a storyline perspective. Ash happens to be limited story-wise, whereas the new main characters are not. So it depends on what story you want told. Do you want a story that's a bit more linear with a simple goal at the end of it? Or do you want a story that can be anything it wants? One that can end one storyline then begin another. The original series ideas fit the time of when it was airing, especially as promotion for the games was the original idea. But after 25 years, something a little different was necessary. The freedom that Pokemon Horizon has compared to the older version fits the current audience. Does it fit with the older audience? Probably not. It's very much an adventure for a younger audience to allow them to experience Pokemon in a different way without any previous history. Ash's journey went on for 26 years. It reached a stage where a reference to older experiences like Charizard coming back or an older Pokemon evolving meant you had to watch the series knowing all the previous experiences. And when aiming for a new and younger audience, that simply shouldn't be the case. A kid shouldn't be confused that Ash happens to have 30 Tauros from an episode that was banned over 20 years ago for the simple use of a gun. You see the changes with other series that are around about the same time. Digimon has gone under multiple iterations with many different main characters. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has had multiple ones. I remember the original fondly, but my favourite two without a doubt were GX and 5Ds, both of which I felt like spoke to me the best. Yu-Gi-Oh! However has gone on under multiple different seasons. In fact, when researching this episode I found out we're not even on Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s anymore. It's a series called Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush, and that's simply what goes on when a series has gone on for such an incredibly long time. There's cycles and you fit into a particular cycle. I personally fit into Yu-Gi-Oh!, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX and 5Ds as a cycle, but everything else is beyond me. And that's the same with Pokemon. It just so happens that Ash's journey has gone on for a bit much longer than anyone else's. In fact, it went on for too long as they ended up writing themselves into a corner a little bit. It was very overdue for Pokemon to change their main characters. It may not fit with the older audience, and the older audience may not have any particular interest or attachment to the new main characters. But Ash and everyone who followed his journey have had our adventures within the Pokemon series. It's time for the younger audience to have that now. With long overdue changes that allow for a new audience to see Pokemon in a different frame of view, instead of it just being, remember what happened 22 years ago on that random episode from Pokemon Orange Islands. Ash has simply had his journey. It's time for someone else's now. Thanks for watching, guys. How are you finding Pokemon Horizons if you are watching it? Do you think the series is good and the correct replacement for the original Pokemon series? Let me know in the comments. Fun fact, did you know most people who watch my videos aren't actually subscribed? Make sure to hit that button because it really helps out my channel. And hit that like button. See you next time, guys.